Hi, and welcome to another edition of 3:10 to Left. Tom Caron with you on the field at Fenway Park. We'll hear from Alex Speier in just a few moments. 3:10 to Left, of course, is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. We're here wrapping up a holiday weekend, Marathon Monday, coming the day after Easter Sunday this year. So there was absolutely a festive feel at Fenway Park over the weekend with the Chicago White Sox in town. Plenty to talk about baseball-wise, but when you look at Marathon Monday, it means so much more than baseball to the people of Boston. The 11 a.m. Red Sox game is a unique tradition, timed so that fans after the game can head down to Kenmore Square and watch the bulk of the average runners coming through after the elite runners have already passed through. The celebration begins long before the 11 a.m. start in Boston. And so Red Sox players, while they are used to their nightly routine, they by and large embrace the atmosphere and that early morning. We'll see if Walker Buehler looks back on this as a happy memory or not, because by everything we're told, he's a guy who puts a lot of work in his routine leading up to his start. That means he got started really early before taking the mound for the morning start on Marathon Monday. Now, of course, we talk about Patriots Day and the Marathon and the Red Sox. You have to think back to 2013 when the tragic events of the Boston Marathon bombing rocked the city and all of us who love Boston and New England. And since that day, of course, Boston has done really an amazing job separating one Boston Day, the anniversary, the commemoration of those tragic events on April 15th. That allows us to celebrate the marathon because the act of terror that happened in 2013 was meant to take away the joy of this day. But the people of Boston have not allowed that to happen. The Red Sox back in 2013, of course, were such a big part of this city's healing and our recovery and our return to normalcy. And a guy who really embodied all of that was Jonny Gomes. The pose that was the cover of Sports Illustrated when he stood on second base with the Boston splashed across his chest. Those uniforms worn again on Marathon Monday, the one day each year they wear the home whites with the word Boston instead of the words Red Sox. Jonny Gomes was back this weekend in the middle of it all, as only Jonny Gomes can be. He joined us to talk about his memories of 2013 and what this day means to him and to Red Sox fans. Jonny Gomes with me and Jim Rice on 3:10 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. Jonny Gomes with us.
Beat button.
Hard to believe it's been 12 years since you guys first wore that Boston jersey. When you see a moment like that, you see the moment from the game, does it bring it all right back to you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it was an extremely powerful game that led into, obviously, the World Series. But I remember coming into the clubhouse for the first time not knowing we were going to wear that. And it took a minute to get, right? And there was like, okay, the Grays, have the city that home as the mascot. So I thought that was such a classy touch. And I'm glad to be a part of it and continue to do it on this day.
Running it back to Marathon Monday that year, people totally forget it was a walk-off win. You guys were on a high. It was an early season game where this team, still coming together, right? They brought a lot of veterans in. We didn't know what that team was going to be like that week, ultimately ending in tragedy, but it meant so much to the sort of building of that team.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Nava was right in the middle of it. Of course, Mike Napoli with the walk-off. I got in there with the pinch hit for Victorino, and the Boston Strong flex that ended up on the SI, which follows me everywhere. I mean, it's such a great photo and a great pose, and it means so much. And if I was ever to get a cover at SI, it would have to be for something like that, as not the talented MVP Triple Crown type. So I'm proud of it. It's hung up high in my house along with that jersey.
Do you remember, so you led off the eighth, you pinch hit for Victorino,
yeah,
and you got that double, and then, a pitching change after. There's a lot going on that inning before Nava finally hit the 3-run home run in the eighth to give you the lead. But that leadoff double, to me, was when the place erupted. Like, we hadn't been breathing for a week, and all of a sudden we all exhaled at once.
Well, we got to forget, too, we had a live Sweet Caroline going on the field, too. And one of the weirdest ways for an at-bat to be delayed, because the concert was going on, while we're up there. And, lucky to get a high fastball and got the pinch hit double and had the Boston Strong flex. And a couple innings later, we were off to Cleveland with a walk-off victory by Knapp.
I know that you guys will always say, the city lifted us up. But, we were here, and in real time, it was a scary moment. The 3 days you were in Cleveland, we didn't really know what was happening. And just watching you guys on the road hang the 617 jersey, having you guys come back and play the way you did, ultimately winning the World Series. But I can't think of another example where a team helped a city through something like that the way you guys did in 13.
Yeah, I guess we didn't really understand how powerful the Boston Strong was going to be, and then how powerful just the 617 area code jersey was going to be. And there it is right there. Taking that 617 jersey and putting it inside the trophy on the finish line and just kind of taking a few steps back, and just how impactful that 617 jersey inside the World Series trophy on the finish line within feet of where the bomb was. What an epic story, and it's true American history. I think that we're all part of, and man, I remember that like it was yesterday, and it was an honor to do that. Of course, with those red boots, it kind of became iconic as well, and it was a powerful day.
Jim, you've been around this team, not just this game, but this team a long time. And that is, to me, of all the championships we've seen here, that is the team where the city made the team better, the team made the city better. It was this organic, magical group.
Well, it's entirely different. You're talking about the city, but when you're talking about the Red Sox, the one you think about is Coughlin Fisk's home run. But this here is entirely different. This is history.
Yeah.
This year was history.
And to finish it with the World Series. It would have been a great story that week in April.
Yeah.
Right? That week alone in April is a movie. Mark Wahlberg did it. It literally is a movie. But to months later have that moment at the finish line, you couldn't have scripted it better.
Yeah, it's wild to think of a real iconic moment that happened off the field. Right? Normally, you got the home run, you got the walk-off, you got the pitcher jumping up in the catcher's arms or some sort of crazy play. But to have an iconic moment outside of the stadium just says so much about what happened.
With that history, too, partner, Johnny, how many people can you imagine that have walked after the marathon and crossed that line and thought about it?
That day, listen, we were on the air. We used to do it down on the street, right? And we were on, Tim Wakefield and I were on the air, and we had just signed off. Your bus was just pulling out, because we used to do it right near where your bus would go. You guys are going to Cleveland, and all of a sudden we started getting reports of what was going on, and we stayed on the air, and so they stopped the runners, and the runners were all filing down Boylston Street. It was such an uncertain time. And you guys are on a plane to Cleveland, kind of getting reports from what was happening at home. Take us through that, because that was an uncertain time for you guys.
Yeah, and it's wild. Every time I come back here, I try and get back here as much as I can during this weekend. Yet to run it, but I'm okay with that. This is a great opportunity to have a 10 a.m. beer and no one gets mad at you.
That's exactly right.
But, yeah, there was a lot of uncertainties. There really was. And what I do enjoy coming back is everybody has a story. Right? Everybody has a story who's here in Boston of they know someone who was by the finish line, they were by the finish line. Everybody was affected, and you hear the success stories of we just stayed, it was a red light instead of a green light. I'm normally there or I wasn't there. There's a lot of impactful stories, and I can't get enough of them. I love coming back and talking to the people and hearing about it.
City's done a great job of creating one Boston Day, which is April 15th. That commemorates the tragedy of the day. And by doing that, it allows us to still celebrate today, right? That was the concern. I remember right afterwards saying on the air, they're trying to take this day from us, because this is such, like you said, if you're drinking a beer at 10 o'clock, you're not the first guy drinking a beer in Boston, okay? They've been at it for a couple hours by 10 a.m. It's such a special day. And even before all of that, you guys knew that. You don't play 11 a.m. baseball.
Yeah.
This is just a different, very Boston day.
Yeah, it's cool. We'll see how Bregman takes it in. We'll see how Walker Buehler takes it in. Everyone's going to remember their first. It was my first, of course, and it's baseball history. It's iconic. It's so Boston. You got the marathon going on. You got people at sporting events. Celtics won last night. Okay, so you got that right in the mix. But, yeah, then you got the 10 a.m. drinkers, and no one's batting an eye at them. It's the greatest thing.
And are we going to have Jonny Gomes up on the monster trying to catch another ball?
Hey, I'm 1 for 1 up there, and I don't think I've been here in the last 2 years, and Trevor Story hasn't gone deep.
Ooh.
Right?
Oh, that's right. He's the one who hit it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Story.
All right, there you go. Take that in your parlay today.
Wait,
Story goes deep. Johnny
you going to be up there like your shirt off?
We'll get you a flex. Yeah.
Get the flex.
Yeah.
Johnny, thanks for coming back, man. It wouldn't be this weekend without you here. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Johnny. Always great to catch up with Johnny, and who knows what adventures he'll be taking us all on as we follow him along in the days and weeks, months to come. Meantime, one of the strange quirks of Major League scheduling here in 2025 is that the Red Sox have played the White Sox 7 times and are done with them for the 2025 season. They won't play again unless they make it to the playoffs, and it's highly unlikely that the White Sox are going to the playoffs this season. There was a very cool connection for local baseball fans with the White Sox in town over the weekend. 4 Massachusetts natives pitching for the White Sox, all 26 years old or younger. So that was pretty cool. They all appeared over the weekend against the Sox. And of course, there was the Garrett Crochet connection. Garrett Crochet pitching like the ace that the Red Sox expected him to be. He has been everything the Red Sox had hoped for, and his last 2 starts now against his former team, the White Sox. Remember, he took that no-hitter into the 8th inning in Chicago, followed up with 6 shutout innings to begin the series here at Fenway Park. And one of the reasons he told me in a previous episode of 310 to Left that he signed the extension and felt so comfortable here in Boston was the growing relationship he has with Andrew Bailey, the Red Sox pitching coach. And that got off to a jump start because Ethan Katz, his former pitching coach in Chicago, worked with Bailey in Oakland. So that small world in baseball coming around to make the transition to Boston that much easier for Garrett Crochet. So after Crochet told us that, we wanted to track down Katz and get his view of Crochet's dominance coming over here to Boston and a whole lot more. Alex Speier sat down with Chicago White Sox pitching coach Ethan Katz on this edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers.
And joined on 310 to Left by White Sox pitching coach Ethan Katz. Ethan, thanks so much for joining. I want to start with this. Like, how have you managed to have a monopoly on pitchers from Massachusetts? You guys currently have four members of your pitching staff from Massachusetts. Like, you're from California. You had three first rounders in your high school rotation that you coached. But do you appreciate the uniqueness and weirdness of having this kind of demographic?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It kind of just coincidence, you know. Vassell came a little late, and then Shu just got back here, so it's nice. You know, I think of it from my perspective. I'm being from LA. I was a big Dodger fan, and they're here at Fenway, living out their dream, pitching here. So it's pretty cool to kind of see that happen.
Well, getting back to that question of the high school rotation that you had, you know, Lucas Giolito, obviously you know him well, right? Like you had him throughout his career at Harvard Westlake, and then you got a chance to coach him again in the big leagues. People who follow the Red Sox, even though he's been signed with them for a little bit more than a year, kind of eagerly awaiting his debut. But how would you describe the pitcher that Lucas Giolito is? What Red Sox fans are going to be seeing in the coming weeks?
Yeah, I mean, super competitive, hard worker, extremely hard worker, very well prepared. Obviously, he's got a nice riding fastball and a plus changeup, and he's got his slider and his curveball. But like, you know, ultimately he's pitched. You know, when he was here for us, he pitched some big moments, playoff games. He was our number one guy for a while. So, you know, it's a special arm that they should be excited about.
Well, it's so wild to think about. Like, you had a rotation that had Lucas Giolito and Max Fried and Flaherty, like all at the same time. You know, 3 guys who end up being first rounders out of high school. Is it fair to say that Lucas, though, was the most prominent of those? I think that there was when he was draft eligible in 2012. I mean, shoot, I think there was conversation about him as the number 1 overall pick for a while. Yeah,
it was a lot of conversation because I think I think it still stands. There hasn't been like a right-handed high school pitcher taken, and there was everyone thought that was going to be what happened. Unfortunately, he got hurt, but he was. You know, to this day, I know there's a lot of good arms now in high school, but he was sitting 96, 98, touching 100. Like I'd never seen that in my life. So
when that was unheard of, also contextually, we're talking 2012,
yeah.
No one, in the big leagues, no one is throwing like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you saw somebody throw 90 in high school, it was eye popping. But to see someone sitting, he didn't dip under 96.
Yeah.
It was a big time fastball, and he's a different pitcher than he is now. Obviously, there's been some mechanical changes. It's a plus changeup, where back in high school it was a curveball.
Yeah.
So he's kind of evolved over time, but I mean it was different in high school.
Yeah. Well, when but you got a chance then to work with him again as a different pitcher in the big leagues. So you also have the experience of being able to appreciate, what it means for Lucas Giolito to miss time while recovering from surgery, right? Like right after high school, he gets drafted by the Nats. He ends up almost immediately having Tommy John surgery. And then after that long recovery process, getting his pro career going, what would be your expectation for who Lucas Giolito is going to be coming back from surgery?
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to be kind of where he was, right? I've seen some of the stuff that he's been doing and kind of where he's at. But he's been through this battle, grinded his butt off to get back, and this same thing now. I expect him to kind of come back and hit the ground running. He's been through it. He's adversity's come his way, from injuries to having a bad season in 17 or 18, whatever it was, and to 19. He can handle adversity. He doesn't handle it well, but he can handle adversity and bounce back.
Were you mindful of how special a group you had while you were a high school? You're just at the start of your pro career, of your coaching career, right? And you have you had a better high school rotation than some pitching coaches in the big leagues will have a chance to work with, just in terms of the talent ceiling, right? I mean, we see it with Max Fried, with the kind of contracts that Max and Flaherty are getting, and Giolito for that matter. How wild was it to you to be kind of early in your coaching career and working with these,
it was
16 to 18-year-olds?
In the moment, obviously I have an experience from playing in pro ball, so I saw obviously a lot of talent, right? But at the time, you don't know what they're going to turn out to be. There's a lot of hurdles. It is challenging for a high school kid, but for all three of them, they were very advanced, maturity. And if there was anybody to bet on, because I know a lot of high school kids will fail, those three guys I'd bet on 100 times. They're special with how they carry themselves, how they prepare, but in the moment, honestly, it's they're really talented, and they're talking about them being drafted highly. But did I think that we would be sitting here today and 2 World Series championship, All-Star appearances for all these guys? No.
Yeah.
It's quite the fantasy dream to kind of see how this all played out.
Getting back to Gio, so you got a chance to, you saw him at the pinnacle of his success, right? When he was, one of the best pitchers in the American League, a guy who was getting Cy Young votes. And then you also saw him go through different phases. In 2023, it felt like he was kind of himself through the first half, and then things started getting away. What was the difference between those two versions of Lucas Giolito, and how closely bunched are, right? How accessible is that successful version of Lucas Giolito?
Obviously it was really challenging in 23. When he was with me, I saw everything, right?
Yeah.
But once he played, he was in Anaheim, in Cleveland. The time I didn't get to see every.
Yeah, sure.
I had a lot going on, so I couldn't
Fair.
really
You
pinpoint
certainly did.
Exactly what transpired. He was really good for us at 23.
Yeah.
He was pitching really well.
There's a reason why he had a considerable amount of trade value.
Right. And obviously, what happened afterwards. I remember there was a couple of really good games involved in that. I know there was a couple of bad games, but I think he had his last outing against Cleveland, if I remember right, he had a really dominant outing.
Yeah.
But it's also hard, from the standpoint, he's traded, then he's whatever they DFA'd him, or I don't know how it transpired. He's gone to another team, so you're bouncing around. There's a human element to that, right? And getting comfortable, new coaches, new voices, new thoughts. I can't imagine that was very easy for him, right? Where there's a comfort level that in Chicago, obviously we have a relationship. He had been there for 6 years prior. So it becomes you know the ins and outs. I know when he's off. I know how to speak to him. I know how to like just deal with his nuances that goes on throughout the days. Whereas when you get a new player, you're trying to get to know them, right? And then he's out the door onto the next team, and they're trying to get to know him, and then boom, the season's over. So it can become very challenging for a player, and I think sometimes people forget about that, right? Like they expect he shows up, pitches, should always do well. It doesn't matter the environment or where he's at, but there's a human element to that.
There's also a human element to a guy like Garrett Crochet making the transition from being a reliever, a very good one, to and then a recovering from injury one, to being a starter. Garrett seems like he was, I don't know about if unique is the right word, but sure had a huge role in making clear like this is the path I want, and in kind of getting making a pretty compelling case to you guys. Like, how would you describe that off season into spring training of the conversations that you were having with Garrett about the best role for him to be the best pitcher he could be?
Yeah, I mean, as an organization, he really wanted to start, and we supported him with that, right? And it was something that, from my standpoint, I'm looking at workload, I'm looking at what he's done, like, sounds great, like, I love your stuff, I always have. Can we do this? Can we get through this? And I'll tell you what, he proved everybody, I would say he proved everyone believed in him and knew it, but like, from his durability standpoint, like, there was never any signs of he's getting tired. Like, we're running him back out there. Gee, how do you feel? I'm good. I'm ready to go. We had to slow him down.
Yeah.
He wanted more. And it's like, well, we got to do what's best for you, right? Like, and he was, he blew my expectations away. I knew the stuff was there. I knew he was how good he could be. But I never thought in a million years he would turn out the year and become the pitcher he became. When
did you realize that, like, oh, this starting thing is like, this is not just throwing a dart, this is a bullseye?
I mean, honestly, it was just like every step that was thrown his way, he just kept taken care of. And I mean, like, the first game he had in spring training was against the Dodgers, and it was Ohtani, Betts, Freeman.
Yeah.
And it was 1, 2, 3, no problem. I think he had 2 strikeouts, and it was like, okay, pass that test.
Yeah.
Now the next hurdle, like, okay, now we're going to build you out and try to get your innings up a little bit. How are you feeling? Good. It's just like he kept going, and as the season went on, he got punched in the face. Like, there were some times he started off like first three outings were electric. Teams made adjustments. He's getting beat on his sweeper from right-handers, and every team loaded up right-handers.
Sure.
So we had to problem solve for that. We added back his changeup. We added a sinker. And he kept, like, we kept on maneuvering, kept adding things, and he kept doing it. And I think, for me, it was, I still take back to like the last, might have been his last start or second to last start. We were in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I really wanted for him to get 200 strikeouts. For our starting pitchers in the big league, it's a big deal. And you think about the innings restrictions that he had, and I'm looking at like the schedule, and I'm seeing like San Diego doesn't strike out, high contact team. I'm like, he might do it, he might not, and he did it. Like, within the first 2 innings, he struck out 6, 7, and he had to get 5, and he got 6 strikeouts right away. It was such a dominant start, but then knowing the guys over there in San Diego, then them come back, and it was like, that's the best arm we've seen all year. And,
wow.
It's like, it was like, for him, not for him, but like for all of us, like, wow, like, like, we're at this point in the season. You've made every start. We put a little bit of restrictions on, but you made every start, and you've shown no signs of anything. Like, biomechanically, you're holding your mechanics, you're holding your velocity, and you're dominating at the base at the same time.
Was it the cutter that really unlocked him? Because, like, the interesting thing to me was that as a reliever, and particularly one coming back from injury, right? Like, the walk rate was a little bit of a concern, and so obviously that raises a question about, can you start if you're walking, 10+% of the guys that you're facing? It felt like the cutter was the pitch that really allowed him to just let it rip inside of the strike zone and then have everything else play off of it.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I also, he's a guy that, like, the amount of confidence he grew last year.
Yeah.
Like, the cutter, absolutely.
Yeah.
but I think the person and the mentality, that's what took him over the hump. And because I remember the year before, we were like in Dodger Stadium, and he's got the number 9-hole hitter up, and he's throwing a 2-0 changeup.
Right.
It's like, gee, what's going on? Like, well, I think he's sitting on my fastball. I'm like, you got a pretty good fastball. I understand. Like, sometimes it's not the best. You're not in a great count, but like, you're giving hitters way too much credit. Like, you're too good for that. And I think he really came into the zone and like really believed in his stuff. And obviously, being able to have pitches that really play well helped that. But I think the human element of like his confidence, his belief, like just grew tremendously.
You had a great seat and also probably an awful seat for seeing Garrett being really good against your team last in Chicago, right? Like when he is going no hit through 7 1/3 innings. Was that even, for a lot of Red Sox fans, that's like, oh, that's the guy. To you, given the experience that you have with him, was that even his kind of A repertoire in that outing, or was it still like, oh, that's going to be even more impressive when he's going at full throttle?
No, I mean, like in between innings, I don't see the other pitcher because I'm game planning and trying to get things ready. So I did see his first inning because I wanted to kind of just take a glimpse at it. But to be completely honest, I feel like he could do that any given night. Like that's just the stuff he has, and that's just how he is. Like it's, it could happen at any moment. Like I'm not surprised. Like he's going to throw no hitter. The question is when.
You guys held him to about 140-ish innings, which was an extraordinary accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
Like more than doubling any major league innings load, any professional innings load he had ever had prior to that.
Right.
At the same time, he is a big, huge, enormous human being.
Yeah.
What kind of workload is he capable of assuming?
I mean, obviously, I think you accumulate 140. I mean, I think he could get to 180 this year. They'll just have to monitor it. I think that's the biggest thing we really did a good job of. We really used all our resources when it came to medical, strength and conditioning, feedback from him, constant conversations of kind of, where are you at? How are you feeling? And I think that's a continual process just based on, it's 1 year. Obviously, he can do this for a long, long time, but, it's getting to know him and understand what he needs is going to be super important.
So, as he does build upon the innings load that he's had in the past, given the stuff that that he has, what's the ceiling for someone like Garrett Crochet when you combine those elements?
I mean, the ceiling is, he's going to be a Cy Young contender every single year. I mean, he's a number one. He's one of the best arms in the game, and he should be knocking on a door for being a Cy Young every year.
You also, it's also interesting to think about his transition from your organization to the Red Sox because you and Andrew Bailey, the Red Sox pitching coach, have a long-standing, you have a great working relationship, working history. You worked with Andrew. You were the assistant pitching coach with him in San Francisco. How much discussion did you guys have about Garrett when the handoff was happening?
A lot. We are very close.
Yeah.
So when, Cam came here, we talked about Cam, and then when Gio went over there, we talked about that, and we talked about Crochet. So, we talk about pitching all the time. But it's always nice. It's helpful when you know somebody that you really trust and respect, and being able to get their feedback and stuff that they've been working on and kind of understand it and be able to pass that along. It goes a long way because it also helps the transition for the player.
Yeah.
Because in the player, I can talk about how my relationship with them. And how much they can be helpful to you, and I think it goes a long way.
So it's interesting, you and Bales, Andrew has come over here and has this reputation of being the guy who hates fastballs, right? The Red Sox, I think, set a record last year for the amount of cutter usage. The sweeper usage was off the charts. The four-seam usage was microscopic. At the same time, you guys in San Francisco had a guy like Carlos Rodon, who was, I think, he easily led major league starters in terms of four-seam fastball usage rate. How do you approach the question of, what's your view on sensible fastball usage and do you hate the fastball?
We see things pretty similar. But I wouldn't limit Crochet to his fastball. There's some unicorns out there. So you got to be mindful of the fastball, obviously, because that's the most damaged pitch there is. So, so we see the same thing eye to eye. That was, that with Crochet, teams started to make a little bit of adjustment. So we didn't stop using his fastball. We just added a little extra movement with the sinker, and that really messed hitters up. So it's like when you're able to kind of do those type of things, it kind of really makes it tough on hitters.
Well, I mean, that kind of like rolls back to the question of like where pitching is at relative to where you were when you were working with young Lucas Giolito and Max Fried. By the way, did Max already have like a 16-pitch mix in high school?
He had the curveball. That was the staple. He had the fastball. He had the changeup. He added the slider in pro ball, and now he's added the sweeper, the sinker. It's like So he's just so athletic. He can do so many different things with the ball. But no, he wasn't that refined.
Fair. But getting back to, Crochet, you're talking about essentially having three different kinds of fastballs, right? Like you have four seam, you have cutter, you have sinker. Like are we in an era like, is that as opposed to just developing one fastball when you had those supreme talents in high school, is that where pitching is at, where you have like where you're creating all of these different kind of like all of these different kind of like shadings of that create like insane deception on the part of hitters?
Yeah, I mean, I think, where the game is at right now, and how, like, there was a couple years ago, it was just heavy four-seam, right?
Yeah.
And then hitters started to problem solve for that. Boom, came back to sinkers. Hitters started to, so it's kind of like that balancing act, right? And, I personally like being able to show two different variations of fastballs, the number back it up, that it's much more comparable than just one. Just to kind of, really utilize to both-handedness to be able to kind of neutralize it. Yeah,
well, important question to wrap up on. Lucas Giolito told me that I really needed to dig in with you on the Clippers playoff outlook. Was he? I'm guessing that you were kind of isolated on being on the Clippers side of things as opposed to the other kids who are probably all Lakers people.
Yeah, I was a different fan base in LA than most people, but I know the Clipper game is going to be going on during our game, so I'll be asking for updates. But yeah, I'm a huge Clippers fan.
Yeah, very good. Well, Ethan Katz, thank you so much for joining. This has been great to have you on 310 to Left.
My pleasure.
Good stuff from Alex Speier, catching up with Ethan Katz over in the other dugout. Now, Alex is on vacation for our next edition of 310 to Left, so I'll be back with you later this week. We'll get Alex back in next week. Red Sox wrapping up the homestand with 3 against the Seattle Mariners. Then they hit the road, this busy stretch to start the season, rolling right through next Monday when they finally get an off day, just their second in 32 days to begin the season. Lots of days off coming later in the season, but not just yet. Red Sox rolling through April. We are rolling on. Hope to catch you again next time. Thanks so much for checking out this edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. For Alex Speier and all of us at NESN, I'm Tom Caron. We'll see you again next time.